Hey, how's it going? Today's video, building everything on the table here. Now, if you have a saw and you remotely like the smell of sawdust and word gets out about this, chances are people will have asked you to build at least one of the things on the table here. So we're gonna knock a whole bunch out in this one video. 1 second. If you wait till the end, I have a bonus build for you as well. So stay tuned for that. As always, free plans in the description below. Check them out if you wanna build any of the things on the table here. Let's get started. This video is sponsored by Basecamp. So up to bat first, we have the vase holder. Now, I saw one of these when I was out having ice cream with my family, and I saw it and I thought, I should build that. And then I started to see them everywhere and thought, they actually are kind of popular. I bet this would be a pretty cool little build. So that's what I did. I built it. As you can see here, that's what I'm doing. So after getting everything cut to size, I'm just getting my tenon jig set up and my saw blade at 45 degrees. You could use your miter saw or a crosscut sled. You don't have to use a tenoning jig like I'm using here. But I've had some really good results using this method here, so that's what I'm sticking with for this build. Once all my bevels are cut, I'm gonna go ahead and mark out exactly how far I want to space the vases on the top plate. And there's a lot of ways you can cut circles, but I thought, I might be making something like this again in the future. So having a template would actually be a good idea to have. So taking some 1/2-inch plywood scrap, I cut it down to size, and then using a hole saw, I cut holes in it, because that's what you do with a hole saw. You cut holes. And I had myself a nice rough template here, but to smooth out the circles, I took out my oscillating spindle sander. I got these holes exactly the right size for the glass jars that I was using, which I also included a link to these jars or vases in the description if you want to check those out. Then using that template, I was able to rough out the circles on the actual top piece for the vase holder. To rough out the circles, all I did was use a drill press, or you could use a drill, works just fine, and then a jigsaw just to get as close as I could to that ring without crossing the line, obviously. Once all three were roughed out, I used the assistance of some double-sided tape, got the template taped down to the top piece of the vase holder. So many pieces here. Before I forget, I am giving away this Hercules dust extractor, which retails right around 350 bucks to celebrate 10,000 subscribers on my YouTube channel. At the time I'm recording this voiceover, I'm only a few subscribers away actually. It's completely free to enter. You don't have to buy anything. If you want to learn more about it, check out the link in the video description. And then using a flush trim bit with a bearing on the top to reference that template I just made, I used the trim router to get all the circles perfectly round and ready for the pre-sanding. After the pre-sanding, I used some blue painter's tape and got as close as I could to those bevels. This is just going to help with cleanup after, all the glue squeeze out. And then my wife came out and I had to show off these crispy angles that I was able to pull off on that table saw with the tenoning jig. And yeah, she was impressed. Actually, she didn't know if she'd like this design at first. And then after I, got it put together like this and she put the vase in, she thought, this is something she might want to put on the kitchen table. So I do have some good ideas. Sometimes. We'll see. I'm not done yet. Just moving on to the glue up here. Pretty self-explanatory. Put enough glue in, get a little bit of squeeze out. I just used blue tape. Didn't even use any clamps here, and it worked just fine. Gonna sand it down and use a 1/8 inch roundover bit on the router and just go over all of the edges. I'm gonna be putting all the finish on all of these builds at the end of the video, so if you guys wanna see how I do that and how I make the grain pop at the end, stick around. Up next, we have the candle stand thing. For this build, I'm just gonna go with some hardwood again. I'm using some hickory here. I don't know if you've ever cut hickory before, but it actually smells really sweet. At least this board did. Again, all the dimensions for this in the description and the free plan, so check those out if you want to build something just like this. But basically just cutting 4 legs here and 2 pieces for the cross middle piece, measuring up from the bottom consistently on all the legs, and then using the cross pieces to actually mark where I'm going to cut the half laps. Finding the centers on those cross pieces as well. And then I'm just using a basic crosscut sled here and then raising the blade so that it's 3/8 of an inch just above the crosscut sled. The half laps for the center piece and the notches in all 4 legs are all cut at 3/8 of an inch. And then just keeping my precious fingers as far away from that spinning blade of death as I can. Just gonna go back and forth and slowly cut everything out. I did cut some a little too wide, but You want a nice snug fit, so take your time. It's better to take too little off and keep shaving more off. You could use a dado stack if you have one. I didn't have one currently, so I'm just using a good old regular saw blade here. I'm just taking a chisel at the end and smoothing everything out. After a quick dry fit and seeing how far off all my cuts were, I went and did a little bit of pre-sanding here before pulling out the glue, doing a glue up. When you are clamping these things together, it is important to make sure all your angles, are at 90 degrees, as close as possible. Otherwise, it's going to be rocking and just won't look nearly as good. So, clamp lightly, just enough to hold it in place, and try to make sure everything is as close to 90 as possible. Once the glue's dry, pull the clamps off and it's ready for some sanding and getting ready for the finish. Number 3, we have the coffee mug tree. That rhymes. I did not plan that at all. Nice. The coffee mug tree, it's great for holding things like coffee mugs, tea mugs, milk mugs, any sort of mugs really. But basically, yeah, I'm just going to build this out of walnut here. I didn't have any surface lumber, so don't worry. Don't let a joiner or a planer scare you. Go get yourself some pre-service lumber if you don't have any of these things. But if you do, well, take advantage of it and become a better woodworker by surfacing your own lumber. But after I get everything cut down to size, I'm just going to take a 1/4 inch round over bit and round all the edges out on the pillar and the base. I want to take a minute and thank the sponsor of this video, Basecamp Dust Masks. If you break or damage a tool in the shop, yeah, it hurts. Yes, it can be frustrating and annoying, but at the end of the day, you can always buy another one. But when it comes to your lungs, you can't buy another pair. Trust me, I checked. You can't. We only get the same 2 lungs for life, which means we have to take care of them starting yesterday. That's where today's sponsor comes in, Basecamp Dust Masks. It's not just another mask, it's been designed with real woodworkers in mind. First off, the new M Plus 4.0 is super easy to put on and take off. The smart ear loops are really nice, and if you need to pull it off frequently during the day, no problem. It goes right back on without messing with your hat, safety glasses, or ear protection, which honestly is a really big deal to me. It comes with extra filters so you can swap them out when they're dirty or after about 40 hours of heavy use. Speaking of filters, the mask's activated carbon filter gives you a solid protection against fine dust, the stuff you can't see, but does the most damage to your lungs. And if you wear glasses, here's a big one, almost no fogging. The fit seals around your nose so your lenses stay clear while you're working, and it even plays nice with headphones or earbuds so you can keep your music going without any hassle. Now here's what's new in the 4.0. The ear loops are fully adjustable to fit different face shapes with no leaks and no shifting. You can fine-tune the tension so it's secure but not painful, even for all-day wear. I've been wearing these masks for months now. They're comfortable and I feel confident wearing them. Don't forget, your tools can be replaced, but your lungs can't. Check out the link in the description and don't forget to use code GWOOD10 to get 10% off your order. Then I had to figure out how to get consistent angles for the peg sticking out the sides, so having some conversations with myself in the shop, sounded like a crazy man. I decided to come up with a jig. I super glued a scrap piece of wood to another scrap piece of wood right at 60 degrees using my speed square to get that angle right. Then used the drill press with the jig I made, tested it out first before I drilled into the finely milled piece of wood I just made. Then I pre-marked it, got everything spaced out to where I wanted to drill the holes. Then using a 1/2 inch Forstner bit and the drill press again with the assistance of a clamp, was able to get all those holes drilled. If you don't have a drill press, no worries. You can freehand it with just a good old regular drill. It is a coffee mug tree. We're not going for perfection here. Surprisingly, it worked first try. That never happens. Now, nobody freak out, but I am going to use a lathe in this video for a couple things. First thing I'm going to use it for, though, is making my own dowels. Now, you can go to the store, you can buy your own dowels, and that would be a lot easier and cheaper than doing it this way. But I have a lathe, and I want to become better with it because I have some plans for the future. So I'm taking every chance I can right now to just use it, get used to using it. I got to practice, so just bear with me while you watch me use my lathe. Got to take a quick break here, though, and take a picture for the gram. Once all the 1/2 inch dowels were created, took 150 grit sandpaper, went over everything, did a nice dry fit, then took the oscillating belt sander, rounded out the ends of the pegs, and then glued everything together with some Titebond 3. I'm not sure why I used Titebond 3. I could have probably gotten away with just regular Titebond 2, but oh well. Then using a 1/2-inch Forstner bit again, I went ahead and just used a scrap piece of the dowel I just made and some wood glue again. Drilled a hole in the base and the pole, then glued them both together. Just want to make sure again, before you let it set up completely, that the pole is 90 degrees on both sides to the base. Just make sure it's nice and straight. Once the glue was dry, I went back over with the sander at 150 grit and then just roughed up the pegs. They looked a little too pretty, honestly. I wanted to make them look a little bit more like they were carved, almost like branches of a tree, you know, artistic. Up next, we have the soap trivet for number 4. I didn't even know what this thing was as of a couple weeks ago, but apparently people like to put these things next to their sinks and stuff and put some soap on it. So that's what we're building right now, is a little holder for your soap called a trivet. Sounds French. I don't know. Let me know in the comments where the word trivet originates from. But yet again, just using some rough cut lumber, walnut in particular I had laying in the shop. You can use whatever wood you like to for this. And then I am going to make some round feet myself on the lathe. You can just use square feet if you don't have a lathe, or go buy some dowels like I said earlier, and you can use those for round feet. But just getting everything set up first for the lathe here. Walnut's really nice to use on the lathe. It's a little softer than other hardwoods, so I was able to get this down to a 1-inch peg in no time, or dowel. Would this be a peg or a dowel? Not sure. Once I got it down to the size that I liked, I just sanded it down, made sure it was nice and smooth before taking it over to the chop saw. I set up a stop block on the chop saw, that way I could consistently make the same repeated cuts. I wanted each foot to be 1 inch long, so just measured the first one, used a clamp and a scrap board, and made each cut on this dowel. Once I had 4 nice little cute feet for this soap trivet, I took it over to the drill press, drilled all the way through it first, and then took a 3/8-inch Forstner bit and just sunk a hole down just a little bit. That way I could inset the screw to attach the feet to the trivet base shelf. I'm not really sure what you would call it, but the main block portion, we're going to attach the feet to this using some inset screws. Did some final sanding on it, did a little 1/8-inch round over for the profile on the edges, wiped it down with some denatured alcohol to get rid of any oil or dust. Went over it one more time with 220, wiped it down. I did try using some CA glue to hold the feet down, which, by the way, I did space them a 1/2 inch inside from both of the edges so they're evenly spaced apart. CA glue did not hold up when I tried putting the screws in, so I went ahead and just used some regular wood glue, held them down, screwed them in, and then once they were all fastened to the board, took out the good old trusty trim router and the 1/8-inch roundover bit and went over all of the bottoms of the feet. So now moving on to number 5, which is the cake stand. Now, I did go with a round base for this. However, there's a lot of cool ideas out there if you want to do some square bases or square feet on your cake stand, if you don't want to mess with using the lathe. But the wood I'm using here is going to be that Beech Red Heart again, which is that very hard wood. I didn't realize how hard it was, honestly, until I got it on the lathe and tried to spin this. It was crazy hard on the tools, but we'll get to that in a second. First up, though, we're just doing the initial glue up. The top plate for the cake stand is going to be right at 12 inches exactly, so I made it about 12 1/4 inch square while gluing it up. And then I had to make the base. So we just cut a bunch of these thin boards on the chop saw, and then after, more conversations with myself, trying to figure out how I was going to turn this. This would be my first time actually making a base like this, but I'm just going to go for it. So after using a lot of glue and making the biggest beechwood sandwich of my life, pulled out maybe 1 or 2 clamps, clamped it together, and then let the top plate and the base dry. This cake stand base is starting to look like an actual piece of cake. My kids thought it was funny when I told them that. So I was trying to figure out how to make a perfectly round circle with the diameter of 12 inches. And I saw Jason Hibbs over at Bourbon Moth use a pot one time as a template for his router table, and I thought, I think I have one that might be about that size. So going inside, I found a pan that was 12 inches perfectly on the dot. Mandy was not as excited as I was, but I'm just going to use this pan as a template, being very careful not to scratch it. Thought about using a jig on the table saw, but I actually wanted a template like this for the future, kind of like the vase holder at the beginning. Probably going to be doing something like this again very soon. So having a template like this I thought would be pretty handy. So this is the route I went, but if you want to use a bandsaw jig, table saw jig, or even one of those router jigs, there's a lot of ways to make a circle. This is just the method that I chose. This part was a little sketchy. I didn't want to ding up the pan, so I just lowered that bit just far enough. There was still a little bit, like a sliver of wood above the pan that was not getting cut. I just took a sander and knocked that off after I was done. Then as soon as I had the template done, marked it on the actual top plate, did a rough cut with the jigsaw, used some double-sided tape, and exactly like we've been doing in all the other builds, is just use that flush cut trim bit on the trim router and got our perfect circle all the way around. And would you look at that? I love it when a plan comes together. Then just taking 150 grit sandpaper, just going over the whole thing. I did add a 1/8 inch roundover for the profile, and then it was on to working on the base. Again, I did not know how hard this wood was for my little lathe here to turn. So this was an experience for me. It took a lot longer than what I'm showing in the video, but I know you guys have other things to do than to watch me cover myself in a ridiculous amount of sawdust. So we're going to speed through this pretty quick, but just using a couple different tools here. Just wanted to, make a nice little taper design thing, I guess. I don't know what you'd call that on the base. Once I got it to where I wanted it, sanded it down, then it was just time to attach it to the top plate. So just used a little pencil compass here, got my center marked, and then I'm just gonna use some wood glue. I thought about maybe using a dowel or something, but this shouldn't be supporting anything too heavy unless you're putting like a lot of pound cakes on it. But with that build out of the way, now it's time for the bonus build that everyone has been waiting for. So, introducing the cookbook holder. Yes, this has been one of the highest, most requested piece, at least in my household, as soon as I started woodworking. My wife loves to bake. She's incredible at baking, and she got tired of having messy fingers and swiping on her phone, and she saw some cookbook holders for sale online, and she's like, hey, can you build me one of these? I said, yes, of course I can. And when I didn't do it right away, she kept threatening to buy one online, and I kept saying, no, wait, I want to make a video on it. So here it is, finally getting around to it. The bonus build in this video is one of the most coveted builds so far to date in my household. That is the cookbook holder. So we're going to cut this nice hickory down into 2 planks, do our glue up for the back. Again, all the dimensions to all of this stuff in the free plans in the description. While the glue up's going, we're going to go ahead and cut the front and the bottom piece for it. And then I'm going to start working on a template. I wanted to make some scallop designs, is what they're called, a scallop design, on the front. And then just using some tape rolls in the shop. Going to make some designs, measure it, make sure it's all uniform, symmetrical, identical. And then taking the bandsaw here, we're going to rough out the shape for the template. Then using my oscillating spindle sander, just going to creep up on that initial pencil line and get a shape that I'm really happy with. Take it over, trace it out on the front piece that I cut out of the hickory, rough it out on the hickory. You guys catching on to the pattern here. This is like the 4th time I've done it in this video. Nothing new, but going to show the process anyways, kind of buzz through it here. Use double-sided tape, use the trim router, and then we're going to start cutting out some rabbets for attaching this together. I didn't want to just butt join it. I wanted it to look a little classier, also give it a little more strength, have it last a little while longer. So using the bottom piece, I'm going to trace a line on the front scalloped decorative piece, and then just cut a rabbet out using my table saw blade, slicing the pieces out, nice thin passes, and then using the chisel, going to go over everything and smooth that rabbet out, do a little test fit, and then by this point, the glue should be dry for the back plate. So we're going to take that out of the clamps, do the same thing we did for the scallop piece and make a rabbet on the back plate. First, got to remove the glue and do an initial sanding. I'm also going to round the corners out here. You can pick up some of those corner radius templates to make this process a lot faster, a lot easier. But if you don't have one, just using a roll of tape, a jigsaw or a bandsaw to rough it out, and then a sander to smooth over the corners works just as well. Just takes a little bit of practice to get some nice round corners. But after I get those top corners rounded, I'm going to move to the bottom. Again, trace a line with the base piece to get an accurate measurement, how thick to make the rabbet. I am making the rabbets 3/8 of an inch deep, just for reference. And then after a dry fit, we're going to sand everything over, add some glue, and get this baby glued up and ready to go. And after I get it all clamped up, glued up, and it's dried, I can move on to getting the back support leg figured out. This one was a bit of a head scratcher, not gonna lie. Quite literally. Didn't really know what I was gonna do for the angle, so I just decided to start cutting things and figuring it out. I added all the angles that I used in the plans, but you know, if you want to make your own, you can do what I did here and pull out a carpenter square and just start making some marks, making some cuts, and working it until it works out. Using a small hinge on the back here, pre-drilling on both, adding the small screws. I wanted the back leg to be able to hinge, that way my wife could stand it up and put it away if she needed to. The good thing about taking your time and building something really good the first time is now you have something to go off of if you're going to build it again. If you're going to build any of these in the video to sell, building these right the first time, then you have all these templates to go off of for the next time, and the process just gets so much faster. I really like the grain pattern on all the wood pieces that I had here, so I wanted to keep the finish as pure as possible, so very fitting name here. I'm going with Rubio Monocoat Pure for the finish on all of these pieces. I've used these in several builds in the past and absolutely love the finish. Comes off looking really nice. It's pretty simple. You can follow the instructions on the can. You mix it up, wipe it on, let it sit for a few minutes to soak in, and then you just wipe off the excess with a clean rag. Hopefully the plans come in handy. Let me know in the comments what your favorite build was in this entire video. I'd love to hear it. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Another big thanks to Basecamp for sponsoring this video. Be sure to check out that link in the description below with the coupon code GWOOD10 to get 10% off your Basecamp mask. And I will see you guys in the next video.